And the Charlotte Hornets will know what pick they'll start with in this year's draft.
4 to go to number 2, it's an incredible stroke of luck. They're cut top 3. And then, there's the next level.
The Charlotte Hornets are in one of the most difficult situations that you could be for a team that is in the midst of a rebuild. And based upon how they make this decision, it could either elevate their franchise for the next decade, or it could result in inevitably one of their franchise players deciding to leave whenever his contract expires, although that's years and years down the line. So before we get to the content, when we get to 100K subscribers that have our notifications on, we're going to be giving away $1,000 to 5 subscribers that turn on my notifications. We're currently at 98.7K, and now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. The last pick I gave you guys on my Instagram story hit, and now we have a free square for game 1 of the NBA Finals. Jokic just needs a point. He's gonna get a point. At the time I'm recording this, it's way too early for me to give you your picks, so I'm gonna post my picks onto my story. And if you aren't playing Prize Picks, use my promo code microphone and they'll give you up to $100 free when you deposit $100. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? During the 2020 NBA draft, the Charlotte Hornets were in a very favorable situation. They didn't necessarily need to overanalyze what they needed to do at the number 3 overall pick. It was either James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, or LaMelo Ball, and whoever falls into their lap should be the player that they decide to select. And fortunately for them, they were in a situation where they just were going all in on the player with the highest possible ceiling. Unfortunately for them, the biggest boomer bust prospect in that entire top 3 ended up falling to their laps. LaMelo Ball, a player that a lot of people were skeptical of, mainly because of how Lonzo Ball's career turned out, ended up falling to their laps, and the way this young man plays the game of basketball is mesmerizing to say the least. I mean, you could easily look at his per game averages to tell how good of a basketball player he is, which would do him justice. 23 points per game, 41% from the field, 38% from 3, 8.4 assists per game. But in order to really get an idea about how truly remarkable of a talent that LaMelo Ball is, you have to watch his highlights. And that's before we get to the fact that he is several years away from what is supposed to be his prime is remarkable. Fortunately for the Charlotte Hornets, they hit on that pick. I mean, they knocked that pick out of the park. And that's saying something considering the fact that the Charlotte Hornets have had horrific draft luck recently. Whether it was Malik Monk in 2017, which by the way is having tremendous career success now that he's no longer on the Charlotte Hornets, Noah Vonleh in 2014, Cody Zeller in 2013, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who is notorious for having one of the ugliest jump shots in NBA history, who's more of an embodiment of the fact that the Charlotte Hornets failed to develop him any further. This is a franchise that clearly has had some very tough times whenever it has come to the NBA draft. So it's not necessarily a stretch to say that LaMelo Ball was their greatest hit of the past 10 years, because now they do have a player that they could build around for the future, and he's a player that will result in some people purchasing NBA League Pass just to watch him play. Now, fortunately and unfortunately for the Charlotte Hornets, they are selecting with the number 2 overall pick in this year's NBA draft, which is a gift and a curse, because the number 1 overall pick going to the San Antonio Spurs, we all know who they have to select. You have to take Victor Wembanyama, just as how in 2019, if you had the number 1 overall pick, you had to take Zion Williamson. In 2014, if you had the number 1 overall pick, you had to take Andrew Wiggins. In 2012, you had to take Anthony Davis. And in 2007, you had to take Greg Oden. There's no general manager that is willing to risk their career by going against the status quo. That number 1 pick is already etched in stone. And sometimes it works out to their benefit, such as Anthony Davis, for instance. And sometimes it turns out to be a player like Andrew Wiggins, who gets traded almost immediately and has an okay career until he finds a team that could develop him properly. Or more recently, Zion Williamson, who was looking like the wrong number 1 overall pick because Ja Morant was doing significantly significantly better than him in terms of his career until recently, which we all know what happened to John Morant. We've made several videos on that. We're not going to get into it. What I'm trying to say is the Charlotte Hornets are in a situation where they actually have to do their homework, because based upon the decision that they're about to make, the trajectory of their franchise could alter for the foreseeable future. It could result in LaMelo Ball getting frustrated and demanding a trade, or it could result in this team building a very exciting core against a group of guys that could potentially result in a championship one day. Who knows? And the question is very, very simple. 4 months ago, if you asked me who was the number 2 prospect in this NBA draft, it was simple. Number 2 prospect behind Victor Wembanyama is Scoot Henderson, an individual that spent some time with the G League Ignite trying to hone his skills, prepare for his debut in the NBA. A 6'2" guard who is uber athletic with a 6'9" wingspan, a player that at the very minimum has a tremendous basketball IQ that would be selected number 1 overall if he decided to declare in any other year except the year of Victor Wembanyama. Scoot Henderson has a twitchy first step and has tremendous finesse when he gets around the rim. The only knock on his game is the fact that he isn't necessarily the greatest three-point shooter. He shot 30% from 3 throughout his career with the G League Ignite. What a lot of people are saying is his jump shot looks pretty good and he shoots really well from mid-range, which means that this could be something that could potentially be developed. Given the history of players that needed to develop a three-point jump shot, it's a little bit of an ask to ask any basketball player that could already shoot from mid-range to develop a three-point jump shot. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it just takes longer than most of us would anticipate. A lot of that has to do with the work ethic of these young athletes. Another issue is the fact that if you want a player that has tremendous basketball IQ to really utilize that tremendous basketball IQ to its fullest potential, well, you need the ball in his hands. And the problem is that LaMelo Ball is one of the best passers in the NBA and also possesses a tremendous basketball IQ. And he actually has the statistics to back it up. We actually have a sample size from LaMelo Ball's career. He's played 162 games in the NBA so far. We know who LaMelo Ball is. Fortunately, there's also the option of potentially selecting Scoot Henderson and moving LaMelo Ball to the 3 position. Whether that's something you want to do or not is a different story. Obviously, when Scoot Henderson is asked about the prospect of playing with LaMelo Ball, he thinks it's a good idea, and they actually have a pretty good relationship with one another, but obviously this is a guy that just wants to get drafted as high as possible, because the higher you get drafted, the more money you're going to make. And also, if you think about it in the lens of Scoot Henderson, whether you go at number 2 overall or number 3 overall, it seems like kind of a lose-lose situation. You're either joining LaMelo Ball's team with the Charlotte Hornets, or you're joining Damian Lillard's team that already has a ton of guards, even if Damian Lillard gets traded away. So at that point, you might as well try to play with LaMelo Ball, because outside of LaMelo Ball, the Charlotte Hornets lack guard depth. But I will admit, it is a wonky fit. Trying to fit 2 ball-dominant guards with each other historically hasn't always resulted in success. But at the same time, the basic argument for having 2 ball-dominant guards on the same team is the fact that one guard's presence will result in less attention from the other guard. So Scoot Henderson's presence and his ability to slash to the rim will result in LaMelo Ball having a significantly easier time operating. Henderson had this to say about the situation: "I think I fit in with Melo and the way they play over there. I think I can play off the ball or on the ball. That's what's so special about my gift. I don't have to have the ball in my hands to have an impact on the floor. I'm not crazy ball dominant. Like, I'll have the ball in my hands when it's time." The other option is Brandon Miller. Now, Brandon Miller is a 6'9" small forward with an extremely lanky frame, by the way, who has already proven to us, at least in Alabama, that he possesses tremendous two-way potential. I mean, he shot 44% from 3 while shooting 7 attempts per game during his time at Alabama. His jump shot is lightning quick, and he clearly possesses range way beyond the NBA three-point line. For those of you guys concerned that, hey, look, the college basketball three-point line is a little bit easier. He's very excellent in transition, and it seems like this is the ideal running mate for LaMelo Ball. If LaMelo Ball is Magic Johnson, then at the very minimum, Brandon Miller would be his James Worthy. Thing is he truly the best prospect once Victor Wembanyama comes off of the board? That's a different conversation. Although Brandon Miller is very athletic, he doesn't necessarily have tremendous burst off of the dribble. He isn't able to get to the rim very often in a half-court offense, which is very significant, but maybe LaMelo Ball could make up for that with his own playmaking. And in order for Brandon Miller to truly realize his two-way potential, he needs to hit the gym. Now, I don't like saying players need to hit the gym coming out of college because if we're being honest, every player that's like 19 years old jumping into the NBA needs to add muscle onto his frame in order to be successful in the NBA. Whether you're a two-way player or not, it's an inevitability. Every player in the NBA has to put on some muscle, usually when they come out of college. So that's not a knock I'm ever going to put on anyone because I feel like that's just a default thing that needs to happen if you want to succeed in the NBA. Whether you're Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, or Scoot Henderson, everyone could stand to add some more muscle onto their frame. So at the end of the day, if you're the Charlotte Hornets, which way do you go? You go with a backcourt mate for LaMelo Ball and Scoot Henderson, a player that was widely considered to be the number 2 overall pick up until recently, even before the Charlotte Hornets got the number 2 overall pick. A lot of people were suggesting that Brandon Miller may have caught up to Scoot Henderson. Or do you select Brandon Miller, a guy that might not have the ceiling as Scoot Henderson, a player that may not have garnered the attention and hype that Scoot Henderson has, but a player that at the very minimum fits into your roster with LaMelo Ball significantly better than Scoot Henderson? Based upon this decision, the Charlotte Hornets could set themselves up for the foreseeable future and build a very dominant core for years to come, or they could be kicking themselves for this decision for years to come, and it could even result in LaMelo Ball demanding a trade. So let me know in the comment section down below. If you're the Charlotte Hornets, who do you select in this scenario? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.